Hey guys, welcome! I want to talk about some new to me stitches. Today I'm going to show you how to fill using couching, and then we're going to do this laced herringbone stitch here. Then we'll do this woven filling stitch, some Picot stitches. I don't know if that's actually how to say that right. And then here's the raised cup stitch, which I am still learning. So I will not be discussing how to do satin stitch or long and short stitch. I have plenty of videos showing those, so go do that somewhere else. Let's jump into it. Okay, couching. Let's see. I am going to couch a full strand, 6. Yeah, there's still 6 on there. Okay, 6. I'm going to couch it with a single strand. I'm using like a darker purple to couch so you can actually see it a little better. And so I don't even know if this requires demoing because I have some other videos showing couching, but not couching with filling. So, but we'll see how this goes. So really, once you get your couched floss up and out from behind the back of the fabric, you're not going to need this needle anymore. I'm just going to park it over here. Hopefully that will be out of the way. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to do all the work with this smaller strand here. And you can play with this. You can mess up with your, mix it up rather, or mess it up, we'll see, with different colors, with different numbers of strands. I'm just using a single strand here to make it more subtle, I guess. Although I'm using a different color, so then it's not quite as subtle. And it's up to you how close you want your little tacking, couching stitches here. I'm trying to do as few as possible just so that this doesn't take us all day. We have a lot of stitches to do here. So that's it. I mean, I start by doing the outline, and I'm basically just going to start spiraling towards the center. Now, why did I start at the tip of this shape here, this petal or teardrop shape, whatever you want to call it? I don't have a good answer for that. I just randomly stuck up my needle there. I don't think it matters. I mean, if you have a really wonky shape, you may need to do a little planning as far as where you want to start. And I can show you that on my my sample piece, that green one I just showed you. Basically, if you have a really crazy shape, you can kind of fake it a little bit as needed. But with this shape, we don't have to. Oops, I'm going to keep that tail out of the way. So here I'm going to change direction, and I'll just lay my floss up here to kind of help me with that. When you have a sharp change in direction like this, you may need to do extra couching stitches. Oops, oh no. Most of the time those come out really easy, but sometimes you get one that's just real rotten. Okay, so see how I have a little gap here? I'm actually going to come in and add an extra stitch to bring this couched thread down a little bit to fill that gap. So do what you need to do, basically, to fill your space. So this pattern is called the Simple Flowers pattern, and you can totally keep it simple. You don't have to do any of these crazy stitches. In fact, I don't know if I'll do some of these stitches ever again. They're just not my aesthetic, but I wanted to, you know, on my to-do list for 2018, I was like, you know, I'm kind of in a rut. I just use the same stitches over and over again. Like I should, you know, expand my portfolio. So yeah, I picked this pattern since it was simple. I was like, okay, what else could I do here? Instead of just the usual, which would be, you know, I will just, you know, either do the whole thing in an outline of backstitch or fill it with satin stitch and maybe a little bit of long and short stitch as needed. you know, what else can I do? So there's these great books called The A to Z of Embroidery Stitches. There's volume 1 and volume 2. So I looked through it there, and which was fun. Took notes. And I did a little trial and error. Some of the stitches definitely did not fit in the flower shapes that I had created, and I had to pull them out, and that's totally cool. Some of them were super duper ugly, and I was like, no. But I got to learn a lot along the way, which was the whole point, right? I got to see stitches I don't ever want to see again or practice again. And then I got ideas for other things I want to try. So it's always good to kind of expand your horizons, right? Okay, you guys get the idea, I think. I'm just going to keep going. And if you want to get fancy, you, of course, are welcome to have your little tacking stitches line up perfectly or be staggered perfectly to look like bricks or something. Again, with all of these, there's going to be a lot of places where you can do different things. So let's see, so here's the couching I did, and you can see specifically here I wanted to make sure this petal went under these petals, so I actually went down with my fatter couched thread, and I like went down in the fabric and then popped it back up. So these here aren't even couched, right? I just kind of popped back up and did a little stitch to fake it so that it looked like there's this overlap. Also, you know, in some of these weird shapes, instead of, I actually like came back up and had to fill in a couple gaps, and you probably can't tell. So, oh, like this one. I mean, this shape is like bizarre, right? So some of these little pockets, you know, when you do the outline as a spiral, you get trapped out of little areas like this. So I came in and just did like a single stitch, and I still like couched it if it had like a bend in it. So that's that. Okay, let's move on. Herringbone, this interlaced herringbone. So I went ahead and did the outline first. It's just back stitch. And then I'm going to do the lacing with 3 strands of this lavender color. Let's see. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. That'll help, huh? Camera kind of got saggy. Okay, so you're gonna start at the top, and you're gonna kind of come up under, like kind of tucked under a top left stitch. I made this shape kind of tricky for myself. So if you look at this shape, I have like a pointed top, which is actually way easier. Here you can see I have a pointed bottom. So if I was doing this for the first time, I probably wouldn't choose this shape. I'd probably choose something more like this. I found this a little easier to start with. But let me just show you what's going on here. So basically you're gonna lace. You're gonna go across and then up and down and up and down, and it kind of makes like little S's. And you're gonna go into every single back stitch. So that's one way you can kind of change how you do this interlaced herringbone, is by changing the size of your back stitch. You know, the more back stitches you have, because the smaller they are, the more lacing you're gonna have. If you make your back stitches bigger, you'll have less lacing. So I found it helped to use the floss as kind of a guide of what angle I'm gonna do here. For the first one, just to see, I think this might be too harsh if I come up through this one, so I'll do this one. And that's a bit of trial and error there. Sorry, I'm using my left hand. It's not normal for me, being a right-handed person. Okay, so at this point, I'm just gonna be doing this lacing or this weaving. I am not piercing the fabric. So I'm going across, and I'm gonna go up to the next stitch and go down. Okay, you can see I'm going over my previous lace. I'm not sure it really matters if you go over or under, as long as you're consistent. And pull. And then what we'll do is we'll come across to the next stitch down. And we will lace up. And down. Come on, friend. It's great to use this clamp for doing the videos, but that's a little tight to where I started. I probably should have started like higher. Start here if you're me. Back in time. We'll just go with it. So yeah, I guess what I could tell you from that mistake I just made was that it takes practice, and you may have to unlace because your angle is weird and you start in the wrong place. I'm just going to go with it because you can see that it's not going to be the end of the world at all. But make sure you get every back stitch. So under, and then up through the previous back stitch, just like that. Next one down on the other side. You might want to switch out your needle. You can see I keep poking. Get closer. I need a cameraman. Does anyone want to come work for me for free and be my cameraman? No? Imagine that. Okay. Or camera person is probably the right word now. Cameraman. Okay. Go across. So yeah, as far as having the hoop clamps like this, it's obviously nice for doing the videos. I'm not jiggling around, but gosh, it's a lot harder to stitch. Usually I move my hoop quite a bit, and I'll stick my finger behind to lift up the fabric if needed. Okay. So either because of the way I started or because of an uneven number of stitches on one side of my shape versus the other, this looks a little lopsided, but it's going to be fine. I'll show you. Because you can fake it. We're going to do some faking. So in the actual pattern, there are like creases, I guess, like petal creases done with backstitch in the center of the petal shape. And so I did those in backstitch when I did the outline. And then when I did this lacing, I actually laced under those as well, so that they did not get covered up, which I think turned out pretty cool. And then one thing I also noticed is to make sure to keep your backstitch pretty tight when you do it, because when you're pulling this lacing, if your backstitch is loose, you can actually kind of start pulling it in towards the center of your shape. So I did that actually on my sample hoop. I was pulling the backstitch off of the guidelines. Oops, I am tangled on this. So that was not a good thing. Okay, so once you get like towards the bottom like this, you're gonna run out of room, and you may have to fake it. Actually, that looks good. We're just gonna tuck it in here. We're gonna say we're done. There's room for another one, but I'm gonna call that finished. And then what I'm also gonna do, since I feel like this is kind of naked up here, is I'm gonna add a fake stitch right here. Okay. That was actually an excellent demonstration of how you would do that, because that's what I had to do for this guy. You can see like this petal back here, I had to fake it, right? Like wasn't actually lacing on something at this side. I was just doing like regular stitches back and forth to kind of pretend to kind of replicate the look of the other stitches or the other petals. Down here I was able to get in like one little loop-de-loop, and here I have two loop-de-loops, but the other ones are totally fake. And then to finish this, I just did a couple of these pollen stitches on top. But here's what I was talking about with the going underneath the back stitch there. All right, let's keep going. So next is the woven filling, which is here. Okay, so this one looks like a basket, really. You're just gonna start, I'm gonna start in the middle like I would with like a satin stitch. And it's up to you what angle you want to go with. I'm just randomly choosing this because it's easy for my wrist. But if you want to go perfectly horizontal, perfectly vertical to your shape, you should. So I'm using a full strand here. Oops, pardon my tail. And the reason I started in the middle was just to kind of act as a guideline as I go on either side. And I am making my stitches a little bit more than a stitch or a thread length. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm making them a little more than a thread width apart. So what I'm trying to say is I could fit another stitch in between all these stitches, or a little bit bigger. This one I found it was very easy for it to look messy. So if you need to come in and draw guidelines ahead of time to keep your stitches parallel to each other, or just, you know, slow down and take care. I ended up coming back through and like faking some stitches. Okay, we will just stop there because nothing else will really change. Okay, and then I'll come in. I'm coming in with a different color because that way you can see what I'm doing better, hopefully. So again, I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to use my floss as kind of a guide here. And so I want this next row to be perpendicular to the previous stitches. So I'm going to aim for like here. I'll just make a little hole for myself so I know where I'm going. And I'm going to weave. So again, if you want to switch to a dull needle at this point, you are welcome to, so that you don't pierce those threads. Ta-da! Pull through. And you may need to come in with your needle and kind of like move things around a little bit. Will look pretty good. Look at that. Lovely. So for my next row, I want to make sure I'm going under that first or top magenta strand. So actually it came, whoa, there's more floss there. Came up, and now I'm gonna then go under it, which is a little tricky. And in fact, when dealing with something like this, you might want to start from the other end if you're having a hard time getting under that top stitch. And then I'm doing my weaving. So you can see here I definitely need to kind of help my strand get back. Come on, my friend. You can do it. Go be with your buddy. Because I want to go down here, right? Well, yeah, that's right. It's a little bit weird because I don't have my, I didn't do that magenta all the way down. Come on, friend, and it looks like my magenta stitches are like especially loose. Not sure what that's about. We need to go back through and tighten some of those. You don't want them so tight that you can't weave, but I kind of have like a situation, it looks like. Why don't you guys want to go over there? Oh dear. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and as I fill them in, they will kind of compress each other and look better. The smaller your shape to fill, the cleaner this will look, as I chose a big shape. And kind of the same rules apply, like if you're thinking about like a satin stitch where you don't want your stitches too long. I probably should have chose a different direction. Oh, hi. Go away, please. I probably should have chose a different direction for these stitches. But like I said, this is about trial and error and learning new stitches and seeing what works for you and what doesn't. So don't be afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to make something ugly. No one ever has to see it. And I'm gonna just keep going. There's my tail popping up there. Yeah. See how that's starting to lay better now that I'm getting more tight stitches over there. Like as I add more stitches, it's making that other row kind of tighten up. So I found it difficult to make a really crisp outline with this stitch, like a very defined outline of my shape I'm filling. So I ended up then outlining the shape when I was done filling with a back stitch or whatever you want to use. To tighten this since I never anchored it. It's getting loose. Cool. And there's probably room for another one right there. So yeah, I probably should have thought a little bit better about which direction I wanted to do here. It's a little bit of an awkward direction. I'll do one more over here just to make that one look better. But I think you get the idea. When using two different colors like this, it's cool because it kind of gives like a checkerboard look. So it's fun. It's definitely got a lot of texture. It's different. It looks super cute. Like I've seen people use it to do like a basket that they then like, you know, embroider flowers in or whatever. So there. Yeah, see if you don't if you don't anchor, you have this floppy thing here, you're gonna get this crazy floppiness. So but hopefully that explains that enough that you can replicate. So let's move on to the Picot or Picot, if you're French. I think, is this a French word? How embarrassing. Jessica, note to self. Look up pronunciation before making your videos. Okay, so with this one, which I just won't refer to it by name again. You need like a pin or a long needle, and you're going to go down to your fabric, back up. This will be the length from here to here of my stitch. These are the crazy ones. You can do a narrow base or a wide base. I'm gonna do this wide. So Here we go. So you're going to start on one side of your pin, loop around the top, and then come back the other side. And that's like your scaffolding, that's what you're going to weave your stitches on. I just want to get rid of that loose thing. Okay, so this is our base, here's the tip. So then I'm going to come up right next to here, and this is our center line, and also we're going to start weaving with it. I'm going to go over. Okay, and now I'm going to start weaving, and hopefully I can do it without messing up the light source or the camera. So we're going to, every row is going to be different. So over, under, over, or under, over, under, over, under, over. Yeah, whew. Definitely could have used more coffee. Okay, so we'll go under, sorry, over, under, and then over. The first one's easiest to do like that since those are already kind of behind where you're starting. Okay, and then we're going to go back, this time under, over, and then under. Okay, so the key with this stitch, I did maybe a dozen of them before they started looking right, is you really got to use this needle and push up here. You want those stitches super tight, this weaving, okay? You can use your finger to push them up, but you want them like as tight as they can be, okay? If they're loose at all, you're gonna have crazy floppy petals, which is cool, but they look better when they're tight. So just back and forth. So I'm pressing down and pulling to tighten without distorting the actual weaving. And again, if you want to switch to a dull needle for this part, that will prevent some of the stabbing of the 6 strands of floss. One thing I noticed is that, so when we get down to the bottom, we're going to pull this needle out. And because I'm using kind of a thicker needle, I have like a little loop at the top where that was. So I think that if I had the opportunity to do it again, I would find myself a long, skinny needle or pin to be my spine here, so that I wouldn't end up with that little goofy loop at the top. So pretty much every opportunity I have, I'm trying to squish these guys up here. It's funny because it really reminds me of this woven, oh, you can't see it in the camera, never mind. The woven, the one we just did, kind of reminds me of the woven filling stitch. So when I think there's no more room, I'll try to at least fit one more in. So they're just packed. And then at the end, you can just tuck your needle in like this. You'll want to anchor that in the back, which I will do later. And then here's the big reveal. Ta-da! So here's that little loop I was talking about. And that's just the diameter of this needle. So, and what I did, because over time this will get all fluffy and crazy and three-dimensional, which is totally cool. But for mine, I actually ended up, I did all the 3D stitches, then I did the satin stitches in the back, and then I used like a single strand of this lavender and tacked the top of each of these petals down so they weren't sticking straight up. I wanted them to lay a little bit more smooth, still be 3D, but not totally out there. Okay, I am back and ready to do the raised cup stitch. You can see I actually was able to finish the woven filling stitch. I think it'll pull that together. So I promise, I know what I'm talking about, guys. It was looking like a bit of a disaster, but when I finished it up, and I kind of used the same technique I did for this 3D stitch here, with using the needle to kind of push the threads tighter. So yeah, good opportunity to kind of get in there with your needle and play. So now we are working on the raised cup stitch. I am starting with 3 stitches to make a triangle. You can see I drew a bigger triangle and I was like, I think that might be too big. So now I'm doing a smaller triangle. I am still working on this stitch. I'm still working on this stitch. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to tell you how to do it, and I'm going to continue practicing it, and hopefully, well, we'll see. So on our scaffolding of our 3 stitches in a triangle, we're going to do knots. So I'm going to come up in this corner here to start. And then on each of those lines, I'm going to do 2 knots. So in total, there will be 6, right? Because there's 3 triangle sides, obviously. All right, so I'm going to go down. Under that first line, I'm going to do a little counterclockwise loop and pull. And when you're tightening your knot, it's important to kind of pull up to make it kind of poofy and to stand up like from the fabric. This is obviously it's not a flat cup, it's a raised cup stitch, right? And I think this is also one where, you know, this obviously the size of your triangle, like I mentioned, and your tension, maybe even where exactly on the line you put these knots is going to have an impact on the final. So, and these are all still things I'm working with. I mean, it's just like any other stitch. It takes a while to get it right. Currently, every time I do this raised cup stitch, it looks different. So I am excited to see how this one turns out. Okay, one more on this side. And then an awkward angle here. Oh, very awkward. There we go. It's hard. Oh. Okay. All right, one more. Under, counterclockwise. Oh, geez. Okay. Oh, no. Try that again. There we go. Almost lost it again. Okay. So there are our 6 knots. Okay. And you can see in between each knot that we did, there's like a new scaffolding. So if you actually kind of pick around in here with your needle, you can see there's actually 2 layers. There's the original triangle, and then above that is another little bridge in between each of these knots. So that's where we're gonna do our second row of knots to make this raised cup even higher. So we're gonna do one here in between the first two, and then we'll do a second one in between the second and third knot, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm trying to remember if we do a sixth one. Hopefully I'll remember by the time we get around. Maybe I'll just see how it looks and make it up. So again, you might have to do a little teasing, a little exploring with your needle to make sure you're going in the right place. And same thing, just getting your knots nice and high. I think this is a cool one to put in the middle of a flower if you want some dimension, if you're tired of French knot centers or whatever, which I also did in here in the pattern, French knot centers, or you can play with colonial knots or whatever kind of knots. Okay, those two in between those ones. Okay, so there's 3. So right now I'm trying to get, there we go. So this would be on the second arm of the triangle, kind of centered. Okay, and then this one's like at the top of the triangle basically. This one's very handsy. Okay, now we're gonna come over here and we'll be in the middle of that third leg. There we go. So we can leave it like that. I could add another one in between the rows, I believe, but I think that looks okay actually. It looks nice and poofy. I think the one I did here, I think my problem was that I made it too big, and so because my triangle was so big, my knots are really super spread out, so it looks kind of floppy and skinny. Because I'm doing the same number of knots whether my diameter is this big or this big, right? So I'm gonna say that's a good learning thing there. So yeah, the smaller your triangle, the better, I guess. So, oh, and then I'll just kind of tuck this string back in here. I think you're supposed to put it in the center, but I feel like mine just wants to go here. I say just go where the thread looks like it wants to be. There you go, you get this kind of little poofy circle that sticks up. A good flower center. So that's it. Have fun, guys!